Chosen one, brace yourself is exactly the wrong instruction, and you have been following it your whole life. Something is arriving. It has already left the hand that sent it, and the only question left standing between you and it is whether you will still be flinching when it reaches you, or whether you will finally be open when it does. Somewhere in the last few days, before you found this message, something shifted in the order of things around you. Not a coincidence, not luck. A door that has been sealed for a long time just came unlatched, and a powerful hand is already extending something toward you that is far bigger than you have let yourself imagine. Here is what almost no one will tell you about that moment. You will not miss it because you are unworthy. You will not miss it because you have not prayed enough, or worked enough, or waited long enough. You could miss the most important offer of your life for one reason only. A reflex installed in you so early you have never once questioned it. A reflex that braces for impact, even when what is coming is a gift. By the end of this message, you will understand exactly why that reflex exists, where it came from, and how to put it down before the offer reaches your door. You will feel something shift in your chest before we are even a few minutes in, a small proof that this is not just words arranged to sound nice. And you will understand something that took years of watching this same pattern to finally name. The real reason good things have felt like they arrive for everyone except you. This is not about waiting harder. It is not about earning it. It is about two things inside you that went quiet, in the wrong order, a long time ago. Get the order right, and the door that has been closing itself in front of you your whole life, finally, quietly, opens from the inside. There is a name for what is coming, and I am going to give it to you before this message ends. Not yet. Not because I am holding it back to be cruel, but because a name given too early gets heard and forgotten in the same breath. A name given at the right moment gets carried for years. For now, hold on to this. You are not the only one who has felt something coming and said nothing about it, afraid that speaking it out loud would somehow make it not true. There are three things this message is going to do for you, and they are not the same thing wearing three different outfits. The first is that you are going to understand, clearly and for the first time, why the good things in your life have felt like they slipped through your hands even when you did everything right. Not a theory. And mechanism. Something you can point to inside your own history and say, there it is. That is what was happening. The second is that you are going to feel something. Not later, inside the next few minutes. A small, real shift in your body that tells you this is not only information, it is an activation, and your nervous system already knows the difference between the two. And the third is that you are going to walk away with something you can do today without spending a single dollar, without waiting for anyone else, that begins loosening the exact reflex we are about to name. Here is a taste of it, right now, so you know this is not a promise, with nothing behind it. Think of a moment recently when something good happened to you, and instead of simply receiving it, you found a reason it might not last, or a reason you did not deserve it, or a reason to brace for the part where it goes wrong. You know the moment. It happened faster than thought. There is a mechanism behind that speed, a very specific one, and it is not a personality flaw. It is a frequency, and frequencies can be changed. We will not finish naming it yet, but notice right now that your chest just did something when I described it. That is not an accident. That is the beginning. If that moment landed anywhere in you, even a little, this is the place to mark it. Somewhere below where you are listening, there is a way to leave a word. If what I just said found you, type the word "found" and keep listening, because the next part is where this starts becoming useful. Chosen one, before we go further, I want to tell you something about yourself that you already suspect, but have never heard said out loud with this much certainty. You are not ordinary. and you have known that since you were very young, even if you learn to hide it so well that most days you forget it yourself. There are 5 ways this shows up, and if even 3 of them are true for you, what you are about to hear is not a coincidence. It is a door with your name already written beside it. The first sign. You have always sensed things before they happened. A phone call before it rang. A feeling in a room before anyone spoke. You learned to call it a coincidence because calling it anything else made people look at you strangely, so you went quiet about it, and something in you went quiet along with it. The second sign. You feel other people. Their pain enters you like it is your own. Sometimes before they have said a single word about what is wrong. You have been called too sensitive, when what you actually are is tuned to a frequency most people switched off a long time ago. The third sign. You have always wanted more. Not more things, more meaning. And that wanting has embarrassed you at times, because everyone around you seemed satisfied with less, and you could never explain why you were not. The fourth sign. Sleep has never quite worked the way it works for other people. You wake at strange hours, mind already moving, as though something wanted your attention while the world was quiet enough to be heard. And the fifth sign, the one most people miss entirely. You have gone through seasons that nearly broke you, and instead of ending you, they changed you, and you came out the other side able to see things you could not see before. If 3 or more of those are true, you are not imagining the sense that you were built for something more than the ordinary weight of days. That sense is not arrogance, and it is not delusion. It is memory. A memory of who you were before the world got its hands on you. There was a version of you, very young, who woke up curious every single morning, who believed impossible things without needing proof, who received a compliment the way a child receives a gift, completely without checking it for strings attached. Somewhere around the age of 7, something in that child began to dim. Not because anything was wrong with the child, because of what came next, over and over, in ways so ordinary nobody thought to call it damage. We are going to name exactly what that was, not vaguely, precisely, in a way that will make you look back at years of your life and see them differently than you have ever seen them before. And once that first thing is named, we are going to name a second thing, a stranger one almost nobody talks about because it hides so well behind character traits that get praised. Independence, humility, not wanting to be a burden. Every one of those can be a mask worn by something else entirely. Something that has been quietly closing a door in you every single time something good tried to come through it. 2 things, in a specific order. That is the whole architecture behind why you are still waiting for an offer that, in truth, has already been extended toward you more than once. Somewhere beneath this message, there is a place to mark that you are still here, still listening, still willing to see this through. If you feel that pull right now, the word to leave is ready. Not because anyone needs to count you, because naming where you stand out loud, even in a single word typed into a box, is itself a small act of receiving, and receiving is exactly the muscle this entire message is going to help you rebuild. Here is where we are going next. We are going to walk all the way back to the moment the first thing went quiet in you, and we are going to look at it without flinching, because the truth about it is not an accusation against you. It is a release from a story you have been carrying for far longer than you needed to. I want to be honest with you about something before we go there, because honesty is going to matter more in this message than certainty. I cannot tell you the exact day anything shifts for you. Anyone who tells you they know your exact date is telling you a comfort instead of a truth. What I can tell you with complete confidence is the order. And the order is something I have watched hold again and again, in person after person, across years of paying close attention to this exact pattern. That is not a small claim, and I do not make it lightly. There is a shape that keeps repeating itself in the lives of people who feel exactly the way you feel right now. Tired of trying, tired of almost, tired of watching things arrive for other people while their own hands stay strangely empty. The shape always has two parts, and the two parts always come in the same order, whether the person is young or old, whether they grew up in faith or found it later, whether they were raised with everything or with almost nothing at all. Long before any of that, there is an older story underneath this one you may have heard as a child, without anyone explaining what it truly meant. A teacher once said that unless a person turns and becomes like a little child, that person will never enter what he called the kingdom. Most people who heard that story treated it as a lesson about innocence, a nice thought about simplicity, something to nod at and move past. Almost no one realized he was describing a frequency, and fewer still realized he was describing a sequence. Become the child first, then receive. Not receive, then become. The order was the entire point, and the order is exactly what has been reversed in almost everyone still waiting for their offer to land. Chosen one. You were not born waiting. You were born wide open. Every child begins life in a state that adults spend fortunes trying to reclaim in therapy rooms and retreat centers and self-help sections of bookstores, a state of open curiosity, effortless learning, and a kind of magic that felt less like belief and more like simple fact. Colors were louder. Wonder was the default setting, not something you had to schedule. Something we are going to name directly in a few minutes began quietly dimming that state. Not because you did anything wrong, and not because your childhood was uniquely difficult. It happened to almost everyone, through ordinary things nobody thought to question, and it is the first of the two closed doors we are here to open. The second door is stranger, and I suspect it will land even closer to home. It has nothing to do with curiosity. It has to do with what happens the moment something good is finally offered to you. A compliment, a chance, help you did not ask for. If you have ever felt your whole body tighten around an offer instead of opening to it, you already know this door exists, even if nobody has ever given it a name. Two doors, one order, and underneath both of them, a truth I want you to sit with for a moment before we move forward. You did not fail. You were never given the two things that were required, in the order they were required. And no amount of trying harder was ever going to substitute for that missing sequence. That is not an excuse for standing still. It is a map for finally moving. If you are still here, and I suspect you are, because something in what has already been said found a place to land in you, this is a good moment to mark it. Below where you are listening, leave the words, "I am still here," not for me, for you. Because in a few minutes we are going to open the first door together, and I want you to be able to look back at this exact point and remember that you chose, on your own, to keep going. What comes next is not going to feel like a lecture. It is going to feel like something being returned to you that was never actually lost, only misplaced under years of ordinary noise. Stay with me. The first door is closer than you think. Before we open it, I want to clear something out of the way, because you have almost certainly tried to open this exact door before, using a key that was never going to fit. You may have tried meditation. You may have tried affirmations, said every morning into a mirror, until the words started to feel hollow. You may have read the books that promise a shift in thinking will shift your whole life, and felt, for a season, like something was working, before it quietly stopped. You may have paid for a course, a retreat, a weekend somewhere with candles and good intentions, and come home changed for a week or two before the old weight settled back into your shoulders. None of that means you failed. It means every one of those tools was aimed at one half of a problem that has always had two halves. Stillness practices, breathing work, sound healing, all of them ask the mind to change itself slowly from the inside, using discipline as the engine. That approach works on one layer. It has never once been able to reach the second layer because the second layer is not a thinking problem. It is a closed channel, and no amount of thinking your way toward openness opens a channel that was shut by something else entirely. You did not choose the wrong tools because you were foolish. You chose reasonable tools for a problem you could only half see because nobody had ever shown you the second half. That changes today. There is something else I want to say plainly because I have watched what happens when this part gets skipped. What you are about to hear is not going to work for everyone who hears it, and that is not a flaw in the message. It is simply true of anything real. If none of what has been said so far has stirred anything in you, if your chest stayed quiet through all of it, this may simply not be your season for this particular door, and that is completely all right. But if something in you has been leaning forward this entire time, quietly, almost without your permission, then what follows was placed in your path for a reason. And I would rather you hear that honestly now than be sold a feeling you do not actually have. Chosen one, hold what you have heard so far loosely in one hand, because we are about to place something much more specific into the other one. A name, a mechanism, the first of the two doors, described so precisely that you will recognize it immediately in your own life, possibly before I have finished the sentence. Here is the first thing named plainly the way it actually looks from the inside, rather than the way a textbook would describe it. You can watch an entire film and forget the plot by morning, yet a song you loved when you were 9 still plays in your head, word for word, 3 decades later. You can read the same paragraph 3 times and feel nothing land, while a single smell from a childhood kitchen can drop you back into a memory so complete you can feel the temperature of the room. And somewhere along the way, wonder stopped being your default setting and became something you have to schedule, if you remember to schedule it at all. You have called that getting older. You have called it stress, or a busy season, or simply the cost of being an adult in a demanding world. Some of you, quietly, in a place you do not say out loud, have called it something worse. That whatever you had as a child, you were simply never built to keep. None of that is what actually happened to you. I have watched this exact shape appear over and over, in person after person, in every season of life and every kind of background. So I finally gave it a name. I call it the decline effect, not because a laboratory handed me the phrase, because that is precisely what it looks like from the inside. A bright thing quietly dimming, while everyone around you insists on calling it growing up. Here is what is actually happening underneath that dimming. There is a state of mind, one that shows up clearly in the way small children move through the world, endlessly curious, learning without effort, open to wonder without needing a reason first. That state has a signature in the brain, a fast, bright wave pattern that researchers call the gamma frequency, and children run on it far more freely than adults do. Somewhere around the age of 7, for almost everyone, that signature begins to be turned down, not by anything dramatic, by school systems built around correct answers instead of open questions, by well-meaning adults teaching caution as though it were wisdom, by a culture that quietly rewards certainty and quietly punishes wonder. Turn the volume down on curiosity long enough, consistently enough, starting young enough, and by adulthood, most people cannot remember it was ever any louder. This is where I want to be careful with you, because the science on this is real, and I do not want to overstate it into something it is not. Research into gamma wave activity has been studied for decades at some of the most respected institutions in the country, including work connected to MIT, Princeton, and Harvard, and several other leading research universities. What that body of research describes is a documented pattern of brainwave activity associated with heightened learning, openness, and a state some researchers have called a peak state of consciousness. The decline effect, the name I use for the dimming itself, is my own term for a pattern I have watched repeat itself in real people, not a phrase handed down by any single study. Here is what changes when you finally see this clearly. Those years you spent wondering why you could not hold on to the wonder you once had, why you felt slower, duller, less amazed than you remembered being, were never you losing your gift. They were you carrying a gift that had been dimmed by forces entirely outside your control. You were never the problem. The dimmer was. There is a woman I think of often, a school teacher, gifted in ways her own students could see clearly, who spent years quietly convinced that whatever spark she once had must have simply belonged to childhood and nothing more. She had watched her own curiosity fade year by year in a job that rewarded control over wonder, and she assumed that fading was simply what growing older meant. She was not lazy. She was not broken. You are not lazy, and you are not broken either. She was carrying a frequency that had never been shown how to turn itself back up, and she carried it for far longer than she needed to. Here is something you can do right now, before this message continues, completely free, that begins loosening this exact pattern. Bring back one ordinary moment from before you turned 8 years old. Not a big one. A doorway you remember standing in. A particular smell. The exact weight of afternoon light in a room you used to know. Hold it for the length of one slow breath and notice what happens in your chest. That small flicker you just felt is not simply memory. It is the frequency, still present, still yours, waiting quietly under everything that got built on top of it. If you are still with me at this point, something in you already recognized itself in what was just described, and that recognition is not a small thing. Most people who click on a message like this one are gone within the first minute. You are not most people, and I suspect you already knew that about yourself before you ever found your way here. Chosen one, I want you to picture something with me for a moment, because what comes next only means anything once you can feel it, rather than simply understand it. Picture a morning, a few months from now. You open your eyes before the alarm has a chance to, and before a single worry has time to arrive. Something in your chest is already different than it has been in years. You lie there for a moment longer than usual. The familiar tight knot that normally sits under your ribs the moment you wake is simply not there. The first thing that moves through you is not the low hum of dread about the day ahead. It is a small, quiet question, the kind you stopped asking somewhere around the age of 8, the kind that used to arrive before breakfast and did not need a reason to exist. You find yourself curious again about something small and ordinary, the way light falls across the kitchen table, and instead of brushing the thought aside the way an adult is trained to do, you simply let yourself follow it for a moment. Someone near you says something ordinary, a passing comment, and instead of turning it over for hidden meaning or bracing for a hidden criticism, you simply take it at face value and smile, the way a child takes a compliment, completely, without checking it first for strings that are not actually there. This is not a fantasy version of your life. This is what a restored frequency actually feels like from the inside. Quiet, ordinary, almost too simple to notice unless you have spent years without it. What separates you from that particular morning is not time passing. It is not more effort, more discipline, more years of trying harder at the same things that have not worked yet. It is a frequency that was turned down in you a long time ago by people and systems that did not do it on purpose, and it has never once been turned back up. That is the whole distance. Not miles, not years. One frequency: waiting. Before we go further, I want to be completely honest with you about something, because honesty matters more here than momentum. What follows in the next minute or two is not for everyone listening right now, and that is all right. If nothing so far has stirred anything in you, this next part simply is not for you yet, and there is no shame in that at all. But if something in your chest has been quietly leaning forward this whole time, then keep listening, because a door is about to be named, and I would rather you hear its name from me clearly than stumble across a confusing version of it somewhere else. If that morning we just pictured together is one you want, even quietly, even if you have not admitted it to another living person, this is a good place to leave a word below where you are listening. The word is receiving, not as a request, as a marker, so that when the second door opens in a few minutes, you can look back and see exactly where you were standing when you first said yes to wanting more than you have been allowing yourself to want. Some of you already felt a flicker earlier in this message, in your chest, in your shoulders, somewhere words cannot quite reach. If you did, this next part was written with you specifically in mind. If you did not feel anything yet, stay a little longer anyway, because sometimes the flicker arrives late. There is a place beneath this message, in the pinned comment, where two things exist that were built around exactly what we have been discussing. I am not going to spend long on them, because the value of what you have already received does not depend on either one, and you have everything you need from the last several minutes, whether you ever look at what is below or not. The first is a short audio, 7 minutes, built by a neuroscientist who spent over 3 decades studying brain entrainment before creating it. It uses a specific binaural sound pattern designed to gently invite the gamma frequency we just discussed back toward its natural range. People call it the restoration audio, and it exists to help with precisely the dimming we just spent the last several minutes naming. It comes with a science bridge of its own, described in more detail later, connected to a separate researcher and a separate line of study entirely, which we will get to properly when the time is right, rather than rushing it now. There is a second piece, separate from the first, built around an entirely different problem, one we have not named yet, one that in many ways matters even more than the first. We will come to it soon, because on its own, waking the first thing back up is only half of what this message came to give you. Notice something before we move forward. The first of the 3 things promised at the very beginning of this message has already been kept. You now understand, specifically and clearly, why the wonder you once had felt like it disappeared, and you understand it is coming back, not through effort, but through frequency. That is not a small thing to have received in the first several minutes of anything. Both of them sit in the same place, described a little further below, wherever you are listening to this, along with everything else mentioned before this message reaches its end. For now, we return to where we were, because the story is not finished, and the second door matters more than the first. Before we go further, let us slow down for a moment, on purpose. Not everything in a message like this needs to move fast, and the part of you that is finally starting to soften needs a little room to breathe before the next thing arrives. Think of your life, for a moment, as a house with 2 doors facing the same open field. The first door is the one wonder walks through, back into you, curious and unafraid. We have already started opening that one. The second door faces the exact same field, the same good things waiting out there in the light, and yet it has been shut for so long you may have forgotten it was ever meant to open at all. We are going to reach it. Not yet. Soon. Here is something practical you can hold on to right now, something that costs nothing and works immediately. The next time a good thought about yourself arrives uninvited, a compliment you did not fish for, a small win you did not have to force, try this. Do not explain it away. Do not immediately search for the catch. Simply say, quietly, in your own mind, "Thank you," and let the sentence end there. No qualifier, no but, just a full stop after a good thing. That single habit, practiced honestly for even a week, begins loosening a grip most people do not even know is there. I want to address something directly, because I would be doing you a disservice if I pretended I could not hear it. Some of you right now are thinking this all sounds a little too neat, a little too convenient, wave patterns and childhood memories lining up into a tidy story that happens to explain everything. That thought is not a flaw in you. It is a sign that you think carefully, and thinking carefully is exactly the kind of mind this message was written for. Here is the honest answer to that doubt, rather than an argument against it. Nobody is asking you to believe anything on faith alone. What is being described here is a pattern observed across a great many people, documented in research connected to some of the most well-regarded institutions in the country. Patterns can be tested, they can be watched. They do not require blind trust, only a willingness to notice what is already true in your own life once someone finally points at it clearly. Watch your own days for the next week with this frequency in mind, and you will begin seeing it everywhere, not because you were told to, but because it was already there. There is a story I think of often, of a man who spent his career providing for everyone around him, steady, dependable, the person other people leaned on, without ever thinking to ask whether he had anyone to lean on himself. He carried a quiet, buried sense that his best years, his sharpest thinking, his brightest ideas belonged to a version of himself that had somehow gotten left behind in youth. He assumed that was simply what happened to providers. Give enough of yourself away for long enough, and the sharpest parts dull. What actually happened to him was not generosity wearing him down. It was the same dimming we have been naming this entire time, the same frequency turned quietly low by decades of putting everyone else first, and never once being taught how to turn it back up. Once he understood that, the story he had been telling himself about his own decline simply stopped making sense, because it had never been true in the way he assumed. That is the shape of what we are doing together in this message. Not adding new effort on top of an old story. Replacing the old story with the true one, because the true one, it turns out, is far kinder to you than the one you have been carrying. Chosen one, if you have made it this far, notice something about yourself. Most people scroll past messages like this one within the opening seconds. You did not. Something in you recognized this as worth staying for, and that instinct, the one that told you to keep listening, is the exact instinct we are about to spend the next several minutes learning to trust completely. Because there is a second pattern, quieter than the first, harder to see because it hides so well behind traits that get praised rather than questioned. Independence, not wanting to be a burden, preferring to handle things yourself. Every one of those can be, and often is, a mask worn by something else entirely, something that has been closing a door in you every single time something good has tried to come through it. We are about to open that door and name exactly what has been holding it shut. And I suspect, more than anything else in this message so far, this is the part that is going to feel like it was written specifically about you. Here is the symptom, described plainly, the way it actually plays out in an ordinary day rather than the way a diagnosis would phrase it. Someone offers to help you, and the word no leaves your mouth before you have even finished deciding whether you wanted the help. A compliment arrives and you hand it straight back, deflecting it the way a goalkeeper deflects a shot before it has a chance to actually land in you. Good news arrives, and before the relief has time to settle, some part of you is already scanning for the part where it falls apart. You have wanted more your entire life. and yet you have quietly refused 100 small arrivals of it without ever once noticing you were doing it. You have called that independence. Some of you have called it humility, or simply not wanting to be a burden on anyone. It is neither of those things. It is a reflex, and reflexes are installed in us, not chosen by us. Usually so early that by the time you are old enough to question it, it already feels like your personality rather than something that happened to you. Here is the mechanism underneath it, named plainly. Long before language, the human nervous system built a very old survival habit, one that treats anything unexpected, anything sudden, anything outside the routine as a possible threat first and a possible gift second. For most of human history, that habit kept people alive. A sudden movement in the grass was far more often danger than gift, so the body learned to brace first and evaluate later. The trouble is that this ancient circuitry cannot actually tell the difference between a sudden threat and a sudden blessing. Both register the same way in the body as a spike, an unknown, a thing that has not yet been proven safe. I call this the bracing reflex, not because any single study coined the phrase, but because that is exactly what it feels like from the inside. A full body brace triggered by anything unexpected, including the very things you have spent years hoping would finally arrive. This is worth sitting with for a moment because it connects to something ancient, something you may have heard long before tonight without ever hearing it explained this way. A teacher once said that a person must become like a little child to receive what he called the kingdom. And most people hear that as a comment about innocence. Fewer people notice he was describing exactly this, a child who receives a gift without first bracing against it. You have called your bracing reflex caution. You have called it being realistic. It is neither. It is old circuitry doing an old job in a body that no longer needs that much protection from an offer. And old circuitry, once you can finally see it clearly, can be retrained. So, it was never that nothing good came looking for you. Things came. You were simply running a reflex built for danger, applying it by habit to gifts that were never dangerous at all, flinching before you ever got the chance to actually keep what arrived. Not a life short on opportunity, a life full of arrivals you were quietly trained to brace against. Here is something you can do the very next time anything is offered to you: a compliment, a seat, a small kindness from a stranger. Do not improve it. Do not deflect it. Do not explain why it is not necessary. Say one word, yes. Then notice exactly where in your body something tries to immediately undo that yes. That resistance you just located, precisely there, is the entire pattern we have been describing this whole time. And now that you can feel it, you can finally begin working with it directly. Chosen one, hold both of these truths together for a moment, because they were never two separate problems. They have always been one story told in two parts, a dimmed wonder and a closed hand. A child who needs to wake up first, and a hand that needs to learn how to open second. Neither one alone was ever going to be enough, and that single fact explains more about your life than almost anything else you have been told before this message. If something in that landed, this is worth marking. Below where you are listening, leave the word understood, because understanding your own pattern clearly for the first time is the second thing this message promised you at the very beginning, and it has now been delivered. There is still more underneath the bracing reflex than what we have named so far, a deeper layer we will come back to before this message ends, one that explains not just why you brace, but why the bracing itself has never actually been about the good thing arriving at all. For now, we turn to something harder, the part of this story where trying your very hardest still was not enough, and why that was never the failure it felt like at the time. Chosen one, I want to say something to you directly, and I want you to actually receive it, rather than let it slide past the way most words do. You did not fail. Whatever you tried before this moment, whatever season of effort you poured into becoming someone who finally receives instead of misses, none of that failed because you were not enough. It failed because you were aiming a real tool at only half of a problem that has always had two halves, and the half you never aimed at happened to be the half holding the other one shut. I need to be honest with you here, because there is a version of this message that would simply flatter you and move on, and that version would not actually help you. So let me say plainly what I suspect some of you are already thinking. You have tried meditation. You have tried journaling every morning until the notebook filled up and the habit quietly died. You have tried a course, maybe more than one, that promised a shift and delivered a week of motivation before the old weight crept back in. None of that means you are undisciplined. It means every one of those tools works on the mind from the inside, slowly, using willpower as the engine. And willpower was never built to reach a reflex installed before you had any say in the matter. You cannot think your way out of a bracing reflex any more than you can think your way out of flinching at a loud sound. The mind is not where this particular door is hinged. Here is a pattern I have watched hold, again and again, across a great many people who came to this exact point feeling exactly the way you might be feeling right now. The people who finally see change are almost never the ones who try the hardest. They are the ones who finally stop aiming effort at the wrong half of the problem and start addressing both halves in the correct order at the same time. I want to name something else here, honestly, because there is a piece of this I genuinely cannot promise you, and I would rather tell you that plainly than pretend otherwise. I cannot tell you the exact week anything shifts for you. Anyone who claims to know your precise timeline is selling you a certainty they do not actually have. What I can tell you, with real confidence built on watching this play out many times, is the order. The child first, the receiving second. That part has held without exception every single time I have watched it closely. There is an old word, from a language far older than English, that captures something we do not have a clean single word for. In ancient Greek, the word kairos describes a particular kind of time, not the clock time we measure in minutes, but a ripe, appointed moment, the right time for a specific thing to happen, rather than simply any time at all. Most of your life has likely been lived on the other kind of time, chronos, the ticking, grinding, one thing after another kind. What is being described to you tonight belongs to kairos, a window, not a countdown, a season, not a deadline. I want to return for a moment to something we touched earlier, because I do not think it has finished doing its work in you yet. There was a young child in you who once believed impossible things without asking for proof first, who received a compliment the way sunlight receives nothing in return for simply falling. That child never actually died. She has been waiting patiently, far longer than seems fair, for the two doors around her to finally be named and finally be opened. Here is a sign I have watched repeat itself almost without exception in the people this message tends to find. If you have ever felt, even once, a strange, unexplainable sense that something significant was coming for you specifically, not for people in general, for you, and you told almost no one because it sounded strange even inside your own head, that sense was not your imagination running loose. It was memory, arriving early, of something that was always going to happen once the order was finally corrected. I want to be honest about something else too, because honesty has to run in both directions. Not everyone who hears this message is at the same point in their own season, and that is exactly as it should be. Some of you are going to feel every word of this land squarely in your chest. Others are going to feel curious but distant, and if that is you, there is no failure in that either. This message was built for the ones who are ready to stop bracing whenever that readiness actually arrives, whether that is tonight or later. For those of you still here, and I suspect that is nearly everyone reading this far, we are close to the heaviest part of tonight. The part that explains not just the bracing reflex we already named, but the far deeper mechanism sitting underneath it, the one that has been quietly closing your hand around every good thing life has tried to place there. Before we go there, one more honest thing needs to be said, because it has been sitting underneath this entire message and deserves to be spoken plainly rather than implied. If you are someone who has believed somewhere down deep that this kind of offer, this kind of restoration, this kind of receiving is simply not meant for someone like you, I want you to hear this clearly. That belief is not humility. It is the exact reflex we have been naming this whole time, wearing one more disguise. The truth this message exists to hand you is not that you have to become worthy first. It is that a father does not ask a child to prove worth before extending a gift. And if that single sentence just moved something in your chest, you already know why you are still here. There is a place below where you are listening for anyone who wants to mark this moment before we go further. If something in the last few minutes has finally started to feel less like information and more like recognition, leave the word already, as in, I am already the one this was written for. Then stay with me, because we are about to go to the deepest place this message has to offer, and I do not want you to miss it. There is an old story about a father whose younger son took everything he was owed and walked away, and years later, empty-handed, finally turned back toward home, rehearsing an apology the whole way, certain he would be allowed back only as a servant, never again as a son. The story does not end with the father waiting behind a locked door until the apology is finished. It ends with the father running toward him while he is still far off, before a single word of the rehearsed apology has been spoken. Most people who hear that story focus on the son. I want you to notice the father instead, because the father is the part of this story that explains everything we have been discussing tonight. He was not waiting for worthiness, he was watching the road. Before we go to the deepest part of tonight, I want to say something and ask you to hold it until we get there. Before this message ends, there is a specific thing I am going to say over your life, plainly, without hedging, and I want you to still be here when I say it. Not because you need my words specifically, but because some things need to be spoken out loud by someone at the right moment to finally become real to the person hearing them. If this has been meaningful so far, and I suspect it has, there is a place below where you are listening for exactly that. Leave the word still here, and let us walk together into the part of this message that explains the deepest layer of why your hand has stayed closed for as long as it has. Chosen one, let us walk somewhere quieter for a few minutes before we go to the deepest part of tonight. Not away from the message, deeper into it. Think of your life as a garden that has had two gates facing the same open field for as long as you can remember. Most of your attention, most of your energy, most of the effort you have spent trying to change your life has gone toward the first gate. That is not a mistake. That gate matters enormously, but a garden with only one gate open still cannot receive everything the field beyond it wants to send in. I mention the garden because it is going to come back later tonight in a much more specific way, and I want the image sitting quietly in you before then, the way a seed sits in soil before anyone can see it, has started growing. Here is something I want you to notice about your own history, gently, without judgment. Think back across the last several years. Not the failures, the near misses, the job that almost happened. The relationship that almost worked. The opportunity that arrived at exactly the wrong moment, or so it seemed at the time. Most people file those under bad luck and move on. I want to offer you a different filing system. What if some of those near misses were not timing at all? What if they were offers that arrived at a gate that had simply never been shown how to open? So they quietly redirected themselves towards someone else standing nearby with an open hand. That is not meant to sting. It is meant to loosen a story you have been carrying that was never actually true. The story that you are somehow unlucky, or somehow behind, or somehow the exception to a pattern that seems to work fine for everyone else. There is a woman whose story I think of often, a nurse, steady and reliable, the kind of person a hospital floor depends on without ever quite thanking enough. She spent years feeling like recognition and reward arrived for everyone around her a little faster than they arrived for her. She worked as hard as anyone. She simply always seemed to be one step behind the good timing everyone else appeared to have. Nothing about her effort was ever the problem. She was standing in front of a gate she had never been taught existed, and she stood there faithfully for years before anyone finally showed her it was there at all. Once she saw it, once she understood the reflex that had been quietly keeping it shut, small things began shifting, not dramatically, not overnight, but unmistakably. A kind word she used to deflect, she started letting land. A small opportunity she used to talk herself out of, she started saying yes to before the old doubt could build its case. I want to be honest about something here, because trust matters more than persuasion. I cannot tell you her results are guaranteed for you, or that your timeline will match hers, or that a single mechanism explains every hard season anyone has ever lived through. Life is more complicated than any one explanation, and anyone who tells you otherwise is simplifying you into a sale rather than treating you like a whole person. What I can tell you honestly is this. The pattern we have been naming tonight, the dimmed wonder and the closed hand, shows up with remarkable consistency in the stories of people who feel exactly the way you may be feeling right now, stuck just short of something they can almost, but not quite, reach. Here is a practical tool worth carrying with you starting today, separate from anything else in this message. At the end of each day, before sleep, name one thing that arrived that day without you forcing it. A parking spot, a kind word, a moment of unexpected ease. Do not analyze it. Do not decide whether it counts. Simply name it, out loud if you can, and let it stand as evidence rather than coincidence. This single practice, done honestly for even 2 weeks, begins training your attention to notice arrivals instead of only noticing absence and attention. More than almost anything else, decides what a person is capable of receiving. I want to return to something we touched earlier, because it deserves more weight than a passing mention. Some of you have spent years believing that trying harder was the answer to every closed door in your life. Work more, pray more, read more books, attend more services. None of that effort was wasted, and I want to say that plainly, because I do not want anything in this message to sound like it is dismissing the real work you have already done. But effort aimed at the wrong mechanism eventually produces exhaustion instead of progress, and I suspect, if you are honest with yourself, some part of you has been quietly exhausted for longer than you have said out loud to anyone. Here is where the pattern I mentioned earlier, the reflex we call the veteran pattern, becomes worth naming directly. If you have tried stillness practices, breathing techniques, sound-based healing, and felt something shift for a season before it faded, you did not fail those practices. Those practices work on the mind, gently, from the inside, asking it to change itself through repetition and discipline. That approach genuinely helps with one entire half of what you have been carrying. It was never built to reach the second half, the part that lives lower than thought, in reflex, in the body, in a channel that discipline alone does not touch. You aimed a real tool at half a problem, and the half it never reached happened to be the half quietly holding the other one shut. Chosen one, we are almost to the deepest part of tonight now, the part underneath the bracing reflex, underneath the closed hand, the mechanism that explains why receiving itself has felt like a fight for as long as you can remember. I want you to take one slow breath before we go there, because what comes next tends to land harder than anything said so far. Chosen one, I want to give you a name for that garden before we go further, because a picture without a name tends to fade by morning, while a named picture tends to stay with you for years. Call it the Garden of Two Gates. It is not a place you need to travel to. It has been inside you the entire time, quietly holding a field full of things that were always meant to reach you. Most people spend their whole lives tending the first gate. They read the books, they say the prayers, they do the inner work, honestly and sincerely, and something in them does genuinely open a little more each year. And yet the field beyond stays strangely quiet, because a garden with only one gate open can still only receive half of what the whole field wants to send in. I want to tell you about a man who understood this without ever having the language for it. He worked with his hands his whole life, a craftsman, patient, precise, the kind of person who could fix almost anything given enough time and the right tools. He had built things others admired for decades, and yet he described his own life quietly to almost no one, as a room full of doors he had knocked on politely for years without ever quite being let in. He was not wrong that he had been knocking. He was wrong about which door needed opening from the inside instead of the outside. The door he kept approaching was one he assumed required more knocking, more patience, more proof that he deserved to be let through. The actual door, the one that mattered, was already unlocked. It simply needed his hand to stop bracing against it long enough to push. Here is a phrase worth carrying with you tonight, one I want you to remember specifically. You are not slow to receive. You are dimmed and deflecting in that exact order, and both of those are frequencies, not verdicts on who you are. There is something else worth naming here, quietly, because it deserves its own moment rather than being folded into something else. Not everyone who hears a message like this one is ready to actually change anything about how they live. Some people prefer the story where nothing can be done, because that story, painful as it is, at least feels familiar and safe. If some part of you has been holding on to that familiar story, I am not going to shame you for it. Fear of a door opening is still a completely reasonable thing to feel, even when the thing on the other side of it is good. What I will say honestly is this: the door does not stay unlocked forever out of obligation. At some point, a person either walks through it or spends another decade describing it to themselves as something that was never really there. I think of the garden often when I think about what you are actually being offered here tonight. Not a single gift arriving once and disappearing. A field, already full, already sent, waiting on two gates that were always meant to open together rather than one at a time. There is a small practice worth trying this week, separate from anything mentioned before. Each morning, before you check anything, before the day gets its hooks into you, ask yourself one short question. What is one gate I can leave open today instead of guarding? It does not need an elaborate answer. Sometimes the answer is simply, I will let a compliment land without correcting it. Sometimes it is, I will let someone help me carry something I usually insist on carrying alone. Small gates, open deliberately, teach the larger gate how to behave. That is not a metaphor for effect. It is closer to how a nervous system actually relearns a pattern, one small repetition at a time, until the new pattern becomes the automatic one instead of the old one. Chosen one. Before we move toward the heaviest part of what remains tonight, I want to acknowledge something plainly, because leaving it unspoken would be dishonest. Some of what has already been described here connects to specific tools built around exactly these two frequencies, tools we touched on briefly earlier and will return to properly before this message ends. I am not going to pretend those tools do not exist, and I am not going to pretend they are the only path to what has been described tonight. What I will say, honestly, is that understanding a pattern and having a tool built specifically to work with that pattern are two different kinds of help, and both matter, and neither replaces the other. For now, we are not finished with the teaching itself, because there is one more layer underneath everything said so far. A layer that explains not just why the two gates closed, but why closing them felt for so long. And like the safest possible choice you could have made. Here is the layer underneath both gates, the one that explains why closing them once felt like the only safe choice available to you. A closed gate does not just block good things. It also blocks disappointment. If you never fully open your hand, you never have to feel it close around nothing. If you never fully wake your own wonder, you never have to watch the world dim it again the way it did once before, a long time ago, when you were too young to protect yourself from that particular loss. This is not weakness. I want to say that plainly, because it deserves to be said plainly. This is one of the most intelligent survival strategies a young mind can build, protecting itself from repeated disappointment by simply lowering how much it expects and how much it lets in. It worked. That is exactly why it is still running years later, long after the original danger passed. The trouble with a survival strategy built in childhood is that it does not come with an expiration date. It keeps running exactly as designed, protecting you from a threat that, in most cases, no longer actually exists, while quietly costing you every ordinary gift that could have reached you in the meantime. Here is a question worth sitting with honestly, not to shame yourself, only to see clearly. What is it actually costing you to keep both gates only partly open, not in some abstract spiritual sense? Specifically, what opportunity, what relationship, what quiet daily peace has been arriving at your door and turning back around because the gate looked closed from the outside, even though some part of you desperately wanted it to be open? I think of a young man I heard about once, an artist, genuinely gifted, the kind of talent that made people stop and look twice. He spent years describing himself as someone who simply had not been discovered yet, waiting for the right moment, the right gallery, the right person to finally notice what he could do. What actually kept him waiting was not a missing opportunity. Opportunities arrived more than once. Each time, some old reflex found a reason the timing was wrong. The person was not quite right. The moment needed just a little more preparation first. The gates were closing themselves before anything even had the chance to walk through. Nothing about his talent was ever the problem. The problem lived one layer beneath the talent, in the same two mechanisms we have been naming this entire message. The dimmed wonder that made him doubt his own gift was still as bright as it once was, and the closed hand that made every real opportunity feel, somehow, too soon. I want to be honest about something here, because it matters. Naming a mechanism does not instantly dissolve it. What naming does, reliably, is take something that used to run silently in the dark and bring it into the light where you can finally see it working. Once you can see a pattern clearly, you stop mistaking it for your personality, and that single shift changes how the next decade of your life gets to unfold. There is a phrase worth carrying forward from here. You are not becoming someone new tonight. You are becoming who you already were before the gates learned to close on their own. That is not a small distinction. It changes everything about how much work you imagine still needs to happen. Chosen one, if any part of the last few minutes felt like it was describing your own private history with uncomfortable accuracy, that discomfort is not a warning sign. It is recognition, arriving exactly on time. Below where you are listening, if that is true for you, leave the word seen, because being seen accurately, maybe for the first time in a long while, deserves to be marked rather than simply felt and forgotten. Chosen one, I want to tell you something that has nothing to do with mechanisms or frequencies, something older and simpler than any of that. Before you ever asked for anything, before you knew to ask, a decision was already made about you in a place you cannot see. Not because you earned it through years of trying, because that is simply the nature of the hand doing the offering. Most people spend their whole lives assuming attention has to be earned before it can be given. Prove yourself first. Then maybe you will be noticed. That order feels natural because it is the order almost every human system runs on: school, work, even some churches. It is not the order the offer we have been discussing tonight runs on. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The very fact that this message found you tonight, at this particular point in your life, when you are finally ready to hear it in a way you may not have been ready even a year ago, is not something you engineered. You did not search for the exact right words at the exact right hour through sheer effort alone. Something aligned around you, quietly, the way a season turns, without anyone forcing it to. I want to give you a short, physical practice right now, one that takes less than a minute, because understanding a mechanism with the mind and feeling it shift in the body are two different experiences, and the second one tends to matter more. Sit for a moment exactly as you are. Let your shoulders drop, even slightly, away from your ears. Take one slow breath in through the nose and let it out slower than it came in. As you exhale, silently say the word open, not as a command, simply as a description of what is already happening in your chest as the breath leaves. Notice what your hands are doing right now. If they are closed, even loosely, let them rest open on your lap, palms up, without forcing anything else to happen. This is not a ritual with magic attached to it. It is a small physical rehearsal of the exact posture we have been describing all message long. A body that receives instead of a body that braces. Hold that position for one more breath. That is enough. You do not need a longer version of this to feel that something in your chest is slightly different than it was 2 minutes ago. I want to return to the field beyond the garden gates for a moment, because I do not think it has finished doing its work in you yet. A field that has been waiting is not the same as a field that gives up. It has simply been patient, the way good soil is patient with a seed that takes longer than expected to break the surface. There is a phrase I want to plant here now, because it is going to matter more later tonight than it seems to matter right now. What is being restored in you is not one thing. It is two things in order, and once both are restored, they do not simply add together. They work like water, finally reaching a dry channel it was always meant to run through, quiet, complete, and somehow inevitable once it finally happens. Chosen one, we are close now to the part of this message where everything said so far starts becoming something you can actually hold in your hands rather than only in your understanding. Before we get there, one more piece of the story needs to be told honestly. The part where trying your absolute hardest still was not enough, and why that was never a verdict on your worth. There was a season, I imagine, when you tried harder than anyone around you could see. Early mornings nobody thanked you for. Prayers said in a parked car before work, because that was the only quiet minute the day offered. A version of discipline that looked, from the outside, like it should have been more than enough to earn whatever you were hoping for. And still, somehow, the offer you were reaching for kept arriving for someone else first, or arriving late, or not arriving in any form you could recognize as an answer. I want to say something to you plainly, because I think you have been waiting a long time for someone to say it without a but attached. That was never a verdict on your worth. It was never proof that you had not tried hard enough, or believed correctly enough, or waited patiently enough. Effort was never the missing ingredient. Here is why that matters more than it might seem to at first. If effort were the missing ingredient, the answer would simply be more effort. And you already know from experience that more effort, past a certain point, stops producing anything except exhaustion. You cannot outwork a mechanism that effort was never designed to reach in the first place. I think of a woman who spent years in ministry, quietly serving, showing up early, staying late, holding other people through their hardest seasons, while rarely letting anyone hold her through hers. She believed, somewhere underneath the surface, that if she simply gave enough, something would eventually be given back to her in equal measure. Nothing about her giving was wasted, and nothing about giving, no matter how much of it, was ever going to open a channel that giving itself was never built to open. She needed the same two things you have been hearing about this entire message, not more of what she was already doing more than enough of. Here is a distinction worth holding carefully. There is a difference between earning an offer and receiving one. An offer, by definition, is not earned. It is extended. The moment you try to earn something that was already being offered, you accidentally turn a gift into a transaction, and transactions can be delayed, negotiated, or denied. Gifts can only be received or refused. Most of your exhaustion, if you trace it honestly, has come from treating an offer like a transaction that required more proof before it could be honored. The proof was never the missing piece. The receiving was. I want to be honest about something here too, because it deserves to be said clearly rather than assumed. None of this means effort does not matter at all, or that showing up with discipline and faith is somehow wasted. It means effort and receiving are two different muscles, and most of us were only ever taught to train one of them. There is a phrase worth carrying from this part of the message: you do not need to become someone new to finally receive this. You need to stop performing worthiness for something that was never asking you to perform in the first place. Chosen one. If some part of that landed heavily, let it land. This is not a message asking you to feel worse about years already spent trying. It is a message trying to hand you back years you may have spent believing a story that was simply never true. Below where you are listening, if you want to mark this moment, leave the word enough, not as a complaint, but as a quiet declaration that the trying itself was always enough, and what was missing was never inside your effort at all. There is one more thread left to gather before we move toward the part of tonight where all of this becomes something you can actually hold. It has to do with timing, and with a specific kind of patience that looks, from the outside, almost identical to giving up, but is in fact the opposite of giving up entirely. There is a kind of waiting that looks like giving up and is actually the opposite of it entirely, and I want to describe the difference clearly, because confusing the two has cost people more than almost anything else in this message. Giving up closes the hand completely. It stops watching the road, stops expecting anything, stops believing the offer was ever real to begin with. The other kind of waiting, the kind we are describing tonight, keeps the hand open and keeps watching, even when nothing visible seems to be happening yet. From the outside, both can look identical. A person sitting quietly, no dramatic action, nothing to point to, as proof anything is different. The difference lives entirely on the inside, in whether the hand is closed in resignation or open in expectation. I think of a farmer standing over a field in late winter. Nothing visible is happening above the surface. No one watching from a distance would know whether that field has been abandoned or whether it is exactly on schedule. Underneath the surface, in a season this specific and this quiet, everything necessary is already happening, in an order that cannot be rushed, no matter how much the farmer might want to see it sooner. You are not behind schedule. I want to say that plainly, because I suspect some part of you has quietly believed you are, for longer than you have admitted out loud. The two frequencies we have named tonight do not restore on a fixed calendar that applies equally to everyone. They restore in an order, and the order matters far more than the speed. Here is something worth remembering the next time waiting starts to feel unbearable. Kairos time, the ripe, appointed kind of time we named earlier, does not announce itself with a countdown. It simply arrives quietly, the way a season turns, and it tends to arrive closest to the people who have kept their hands open through the part of winter that looked, from the outside, like nothing at all. I want to say one more honest thing here, because I do not want to leave you with a picture that is only comforting and not also true. Some seasons of waiting are genuinely long. I am not going to pretend every closed door opens quickly once you understand a mechanism. What changes, once you understand it, is not always the speed. It is the posture. You stop bracing through the waiting and start receiving through it. And that shift alone changes how the waiting actually feels while it lasts. Chosen one, we are close now to the part of tonight where all three threads finally come together. The dimmed wonder, the closed hand, and the reflex that braces against both of them at once. Before we get there, I want to name something plainly that has been sitting underneath this entire message without being said outright. The powerful hand mentioned at the very beginning of tonight was never a stranger. It was never a coincidence, and it was never random chance dressed up as opportunity. It has a name, an old one you likely learned as a child and may have drifted from over the years the way most people drift from things they were taught too young to fully understand. Whatever word you use for that hand, Father, Creator, the higher intelligence behind the order of things, the offer we are describing tonight did not originate in a marketing plan or a clever headline. It originated in exactly the same place the two frequencies we named tonight originated, in a design meant for you to receive fully, joyfully, and without having to prove anything first. There is a place below where you are listening worth using now if this has landed the way I suspect it has. Leave the word recognized, because recognizing the hand behind the offer changes how the rest of tonight is going to feel in your chest. I want to give the whole picture a name now, before we go to the final mechanism of the night, because a picture this important deserves to be carried forward with language rather than only with feeling. What has been described to you across this entire message is not two separate repairs happening side by side. It is one restoration, moving through a mind and a hand in a fixed order, the way water moves through two connected chambers rather than filling both at once. Call it what it actually is, a reversal of exactly what happened to that bright, curious child a long time ago, brought back in the correct sequence for the first time since it was interrupted. I call this child mind reversal, and I want you to hear both words carefully. Not childish, child mind. The specific state a young mind runs on before the world teaches it caution as a substitute for wisdom. Curiosity gets traded for control, and receiving gets replaced by earning. Reversal does not mean going backward into naivety. It means restoring a capacity that was always meant to mature alongside you, rather than being switched off entirely. A grown adult with a restored child mind is not less discerning. If anything, that person becomes more discerning, because wonder and wisdom were never actually opposites, only separated by a culture that rewards one and quietly punishes the other. Here is something worth noticing about the story of the father and the returning son, told earlier tonight. The son believed he needed to return as a servant because he assumed adulthood meant earning his place all over again. The father received him as a son immediately, without negotiation, because the father had never actually stopped seeing him as one. That is the entire architecture of the offer tonight, compressed into a single old story. You have been trying to return as a servant, presenting proof, presenting effort, presenting worthiness to a hand that was never asking for any of it. Become like the child again first. Then receive as the child receives, without negotiation, without proving anything at all. I want to be honest about the weight of what has just been said, because I do not want it to slide past you the way comforting words sometimes do. If your entire life has run on the assumption that everything meaningful must be earned through effort, hearing that an offer requires no earning at all can feel almost unsettling, like the ground shifting slightly under something you built your whole identity on. That discomfort is not a warning sign. It is the exact discomfort a person feels the moment an old, exhausting rule quietly stops applying to them. Chosen one. There is a reason this message keeps circling back to that word, chosen, rather than simply calling you fortunate or ready or deserving. Fortunate implies luck. Deserving implies a scale someone else gets to judge you against. Chosen implies something entirely different. A decision made by someone else, about you specifically, before you did anything at all to earn it. I think that word has followed you for longer than you have said out loud. Maybe you heard it as a child, in a story, in a song, in a passing comment from someone who saw something in you that you could not yet see in yourself. Maybe it has simply been a quiet, persistent sense, one you learned to keep private because saying it out loud felt like tempting fate. Whatever shape it has taken, I want you to know it was never your imagination. It was accurate, arriving early, describing something that was always going to become true once the two frequencies we have spent this entire message naming were finally restored in the correct order. There is one mechanism left to name tonight, the deepest one, the one that ties the dimmed wonder and the closed hand together into a single, coherent explanation for why receiving has felt like a fight for as long as you can remember. We named a piece of it earlier when we talked about the bracing reflex. What we have not yet said plainly is exactly how that reflex connects to the closed hand itself, and why understanding that connection is the final key this message came to give you. Below where you are listening, if everything said so far has been building towards something in you, this is a good moment to leave the word chosen, not as a hashtag. As a quiet act of finally accepting a word you may have been afraid to claim out loud for a very long time. Here it is, the connection, named plainly and completely, the way the rest of tonight deserves to be named. I want to give you one more practical tool before we move any further, because tonight should leave your hands full of things you can actually use, not simply full of ideas you admired for an hour and then set down. This one has to do with language, specifically the language you use about yourself when nobody else is listening. Most people never audit that inner language because it runs so constantly it becomes invisible, the way a hum in a room disappears from awareness after enough time passes. For the next few days, notice how often a sentence about yourself contains the word just. I am just trying to get by. I just got lucky. It just worked out this time. That small word, said often enough, quietly trains the mind to treat every good outcome as an accident rather than a pattern, and every difficult season as a permanent identity rather than a temporary weather system passing through. Try replacing it gently, without forcing anything dramatic. Instead of it just worked out, try it worked, because I was finally open to it. Instead of I am just tired, try I am tired, and that is a season, not a sentence. Small edits to language sound cosmetic until you notice how much of your actual belief about yourself is built, brick by brick, out of exactly this kind of small, repeated phrasing. There is a story I think of often about a woman who ran a small shop for over 20 years, known throughout her town for a kind of steady warmth that made strangers feel like regulars within a single visit. She would have told you, if you asked, that she had made peace with a quiet life, modest, unremarkable, nothing to complain about, and nothing especially wanted either. What she rarely said out loud, because it embarrassed her to admit it even to herself, was a much older ache, one that had nothing to do with the shop, a sense that somewhere along the way she had traded a much larger life for a safer, smaller one. And she had done it so gradually she could not point to the exact day it happened. Nothing about her choices was foolish. Safety mattered, and she had real responsibilities that made caution reasonable for years. What she had never realized was that safety and a permanently closed hand are not the same requirement. She could have kept every responsible choice she ever made and still, quietly, practiced receiving the smaller gifts that kept arriving at her door in the meantime. If only someone had shown her the reflex standing in the way. I tell you her story not because your life needs to look like hers, but because the ache she carried, wordless for years, is a very common ache, and giving it language tends to be the first real step toward finally addressing it directly instead of quietly managing it forever. Chosen one, here is something worth asking yourself honestly tonight, gently, without judgment attached to whatever answer arrives. If you continue exactly as you have been for another 5 years, changing nothing about the 2 frequencies we have named, what does that 5 years likely look like? Not to frighten you, simply to see clearly what staying exactly the same actually costs, since most people never calculate that cost until it has already been paid in full. And now ask the opposite question. If both frequencies were fully restored, in the right order, starting tonight, what does that same 5 years look like instead? Do not rush the answer. Let yourself actually picture it in some detail, the way we pictured that morning earlier, because a picture held clearly in the mind tends to pull a person toward it far more effectively than a vague hope ever could. There is a reason this message has taken the time it has taken tonight, rather than rushing straight to a solution. Rushing a mechanism this important would have handed you a shortcut that quietly failed the same way every previous shortcut has failed, leaving you exactly where you started, only more discouraged than before. We are close now. Before we arrive at what comes next, I want to say one more thing plainly, because it deserves to be said before anything else follows it. Everything shared with you tonight, every mechanism, every story, every small practice has already been given to you freely, in full, whether you ever take another single step after this message ends or not. Nothing that follows changes the value of what you have already received. There is a particular kind of comparison that quietly feeds the exact reflex we have been naming all message long, and it deserves its own moment tonight, because almost everyone does it without realizing how much damage it causes. It happens whenever you measure your own timeline against someone else, especially someone whose good things seem to have arrived earlier, faster, easier than yours. A friend receives news. You have been hoping for yourself. A stranger online appears to have reached, effortlessly, a place you have been working toward for years. And something in you, quietly, concludes that their timing proves something true about your own worthiness that has nothing to do with timing at all. That conclusion is false every time, though it rarely feels false in the moment it arrives. Timing is not a scoreboard. It was never built to rank people against each other. It was built around readiness, around sequence, around the specific order. 2 frequencies happen to be restored in a single life, and no 2 lives restore those frequencies in exactly the same order or at exactly the same pace. I think of a man who ran a small shop in a neighborhood far from the place he was born, who spent years watching others around him seem to prosper faster, open second locations faster, get spoken about with more admiration than he ever heard directed toward himself. He worked as hard as any of them, sometimes harder, and for a long stretch of years, he quietly believed something was simply wrong with him, some flaw in his character or his luck that kept him permanently one step behind. He did not realize, because no one had ever said it to him plainly, that he was comparing his second chapter to the fifth chapter of someone else, without ever seeing the years those other people had already spent failing quietly before their success became visible enough to be noticed. Comparison almost never compares like with like. It compares your visible present to the edited highlight of someone else and calls the difference a verdict on your worth. What eventually changed for him was not his circumstances at first. It was a decision, made quietly and repeated daily, to stop checking his own timeline against anyone else and to ask instead only whether he was still faithfully doing the next right thing in front of him. His shop grew slowly after that, not instantly, but he told people afterward that the growth felt different once he stopped measuring it against a race that was never actually real. Chosen one. Here is something worth asking yourself honestly right now. Whose timeline have you been quietly measuring your own against? Name them, even just to yourself, and then, gently, let that comparison go, the same way we practiced letting other weights go earlier tonight, because it was never actually telling you anything true about your own restoration. There is a kind of urgency, too, worth naming carefully, different from the honest urgency we will return to later. Counterfeit urgency convinces you that a single moment was your only chance, that a door closing once means it can never open again in any form. That kind of urgency is almost always false, because the powerful hand we have been speaking of tonight does not operate on a single narrow window the way a limited sale does. It operates on relationship, on readiness, on a willingness to keep showing up with an open hand rather than a closed one. This does not mean waiting costs nothing. It genuinely does cost something, a delay you did not have to live through if the two frequencies had been restored sooner. But it does mean you are not disqualified simply because an earlier moment already passed without you being ready for it. Readiness itself can still arrive tonight, later this week, next season, and each time it arrives more fully, the door proves, again, that it was never as narrow as counterfeit urgency made it feel. There is a difference worth naming clearly between waiting and preparing, because most people believe they are doing the second one when they are actually only doing the first. Waiting is passive. It sits, watches the door, checks it periodically, and quietly measures the length of delay as though delay itself were the whole story. Preparing is active. It uses the exact same span of time to become the kind of person capable of holding what is coming, whether that thing arrives in a week or in 3 years. The two frequencies we have named all message long are not restored by waiting for them. They are restored by practicing in small daily ways exactly the postures we have walked through together tonight. The open hand, the noticed breath, the gratitude offered before the outcome is certain. Every one of those small practices is preparation, not waiting, even though from the outside they can look identical to someone simply passing time. I think of a teacher, close to the end of a long career, who spent years assuming her most meaningful contribution had already happened decades earlier, in a classroom full of students who had long since grown and scattered. She believed, quietly, that whatever impact she was going to have on the world had already been made, and what remained was simply finishing out the years until retirement. She was preparing the whole time without calling it that. She kept notes, she kept mentoring younger teachers almost as an afterthought. She kept a habit, small and private, of writing down one thing she had learned each week, for reasons she could not have fully explained even to herself. None of it looked like anything significant while it was happening. Late in her career, almost by accident, those notes became the basis for something that reached far more people than her classroom ever had. Not because she suddenly became someone new, but because decades of quiet, unnoticed preparation had built something sturdy enough to finally be used at scale. She told people afterward that if someone had told her 20 years earlier what those notes would eventually become, she would not have believed them, and she also would not have needed to. The preparing did not require her belief. It only required her continuing. Chosen one, here is something worth asking yourself honestly tonight. In the waiting you have already done, however long it has been, what have you actually been building? Even if the answer feels small, name it. A habit, a patience you did not have before, a willingness to keep an open hand even when nothing has arrived in it yet. None of that has been wasted, regardless of how the waiting has felt from the inside. There is a kind of hope that gets quietly damaged by long delay, and it deserves to be named honestly rather than glossed over with easy comfort. Hope deferred does something real to a person. It is allowed to hurt, and pretending otherwise does not actually make anyone stronger. It only makes them more isolated in a pain they have been told not to feel. What tonight offers is not a demand to feel differently about a hope that has already been stretched thin. It is simply a naming of why that hope has felt so heavy to carry, and a specific, workable path toward carrying it differently from here forward, restored in the correct order, rather than carried alone in the wrong one for one more year. There is one last small practice worth giving you before we move any further tonight, and I want to frame it plainly as a declaration rather than a request, because that distinction matters more than it might seem to. Most people who try to shift their inner life do it through requests, small, hopeful sentences aimed outward, asking for something to change. There is nothing wrong with asking, but a declaration works differently. It does not ask whether something is true. It speaks from the place where it already is true, the way a title is spoken before the work matching it is finished, the way a name is given to a child long before that child has done anything yet to earn it. Each morning, before the day has a chance to hand you its usual noise, try saying one sentence out loud, even quietly, even just moving your lips if that is all a given morning allows. Say it the way you would say a fact rather than a wish. Something close to this. I am not who the delay said I was. I am open today in both directions to receive what wonder notices and to trust what has already been set into motion on my behalf. You do not need those exact words. Framework matters more than phrasing. The framework is simply this: speaking from restored identity rather than from ongoing lack, out loud, daily, until it stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like a report. I think of a young musician who spent years introducing herself quietly as someone who was still trying to make it. A phrase that sounds humble but actually functions as a daily renewal of an unfinished, uncertain identity. Everything about how she carried herself, how she negotiated, how she showed up in rooms that mattered, flowed downstream from that one small, repeated sentence. Someone eventually suggested she try something different, not as flattery, but as an experiment. Introduce yourself, just for a season, as an artist, full stop. No qualifier about trying or hoping or still working on it. She resisted at first, said it felt like lying. It was not lying. It was speaking from a truer layer of who she already was, underneath years of accumulated hedging. Something in how she carried herself changed within weeks, not because her skill had changed overnight, but because a person who introduces themselves as arriving carries a room differently than a person who introduces themselves as still trying. Doors that had been quietly closed to the second version of her began, gradually, opening for the first version, the one she had always actually been underneath the hedge. Chosen one, whatever words you choose for your own morning declaration, let them come from the identity. This whole message has been naming rather than from the lack you may have been narrating quietly to yourself for years. You are not still trying to become chosen. You already are. And the declaration is simply catching your own mouth up to what has already been true the entire time. There is one more thing worth naming before we move toward what remains of tonight. Something quieter than everything said so far, easy to miss entirely if nobody points directly at it. Some of what you have been waiting for has already arrived, more than once, wearing a disguise so ordinary you walked past it without recognizing what it actually was. Good things rarely arrive labeled. They rarely announce themselves the way we imagine them announcing themselves when we picture the moment in advance. They arrive small, plain, easy to mistake for coincidence, and the bracing reflex we have spent this entire message naming is especially good at helping you dismiss them the instant they show up. I think of a father who spent years quietly grieving a distance that had grown between himself and his adult child, a distance neither of them had chosen on purpose, the kind that simply accumulates through years of misunderstanding and pride on both sides. He had prayed specifically for restoration, for one honest conversation that might finally close the gap. What arrived, eventually, was not a dramatic reconciliation scene of the kind he had pictured. It was a single ordinary phone call, on an ordinary evening, about nothing important at all. A question about a recipe, a small detail from childhood his child wanted to confirm. He almost treated it as nothing. It was, in fact, exactly what he had been asking for, the door quietly opening in a shape too plain to recognize as the answer at first glance. He told me later that if someone had described that exact phone call to him in advance, he would have said that was not what he was asking for. He had been picturing something larger, something that announced itself the moment it arrived. What he actually received was smaller, ordinary, and completely real, and it took him weeks to realize the answer had already come and gone by the time he finally recognized it for what it was. This is precisely why noticing matters as much as receiving. An open hand that is not also paying attention will let real answers slip past, disguised as ordinary Tuesdays, and then wonder, months later, why nothing ever seems to change. Here is a small habit worth starting tonight, alongside everything else we have practiced. Keep something nearby, a notebook, a note on your phone, anything simple, and once a day, write down one thing that arrived that you did not force into existence yourself, not to prove anything to anyone else, simply to build, slowly, a record your own bracing reflex cannot argue with later, because it will be sitting there in your own handwriting, dated, real, undeniable. Most people who start this habit are surprised, within a week or two, at how much was already arriving that they had simply never stopped to notice. The point was never that nothing was coming. The point was that noticing had gone quiet at the exact same time. Everything else we have named tonight went quiet, in the same order, for the same reasons. Chosen one, whatever has already arrived in your life this week, small, ordinary, easy to dismiss, I want you to consider, just for a moment, that it may not have been as small as it looked. Some answers come wearing work clothes rather than formal ones. That does not make them any less real. I want to return, for a moment, to the garden we named earlier, because it has one more detail worth adding before we move forward. A garden with two open gates does not simply receive more than a garden with one. It receives differently. Things that could never fit through a single narrow gate. Larger things, more complete things, whole seasons of provision rather than single scattered gifts, finally have a way in. This is worth sitting with honestly, because it explains something you may have noticed without having language for it. Some of what has felt missing in your life was never small enough to fit through the one gate that has been open. It was waiting for both gates at once. The way certain furniture cannot fit through a doorway turned at the wrong angle no matter how hard anyone pushes. I think of a young father I heard about once, working 2 jobs, exhausted in the particular way that comes from constantly giving out more than is coming back in. He had prayed, specifically and often, for relief, for margin, for a single season where the math of his life finally balanced. Relief kept arriving in fragments, an extra shift that helped for a week, a small gift from a relative that covered one bill and not the others, never quite enough to change the whole shape of things. He was not praying wrong, and he was not lacking faith. He was standing in front of a gate wide enough for fragments and asking it to deliver something whole. The whole thing he actually needed required the second gate to be open as well, the one that could receive an entire season of provision rather than another isolated fragment arriving just in time to be immediately spent. Here is a phrase worth carrying forward from this part of the message. Fragments are not failures. They are proof the first gate has been working. They are simply not the whole offer, and mistaking a fragment for the whole thing is part of why so many people quietly stop expecting more than fragments at all. Chosen one, I want to ask you something directly now, gently, because the answer matters more than it might seem to on the surface. When you picture receiving something whole, not a fragment, not a partial answer, but the complete thing you have actually been hoping for underneath all the smaller requests, what happens in your chest right now, as you simply imagine it? If something tightened there, even slightly, that tightening is worth noticing rather than pushing past. It is very likely the exact reflex we have spent this entire message naming, activating in real time, right now, in response to nothing more than an idea. That is how deeply installed this pattern actually is, and that is also exactly why naming it plainly, the way we have done tonight, matters as much as it does. We have named the bracing reflex, the way it flinches at good things, the same way it flinches at bad ones. What we have not yet done is go underneath that reflex to the specific mechanism that decides, moment by moment, whether an open hand or a closed one actually wins. That mechanism is quieter than the bracing reflex, harder to catch in the moment it happens, and far more responsible for how your life has actually gone than the reflex alone could ever explain. It deserves to be named plainly, the same way everything else tonight has been named plainly, rather than left to keep running in the dark. There is one more piece worth adding here, because it explains something about timing that most people never think to ask about directly. You have probably wondered, at some point, why good things seem to arrive exactly when they arrive, never quite on the schedule you would have chosen for them. Too late to spare you the hardest part of a season, yet somehow, looking back, not one day later than the moment you were finally ready to actually receive them, rather than simply survive their arrival. There is an old word for this kind of timing, one that means something different from ordinary clock time. It describes the right moment rather than the next moment, the ripe moment rather than the rushed one. A farmer does not harvest a field because a certain number of days have passed. He harvests it because the field itself has finished becoming what it was always going to become. Your life has been running on that same kind of clock the entire time, whether anyone ever explained it to you or not. The delay you have been calling bad luck was very often simply the field finishing. I think of a retired soldier I once heard about, a man trained for decades to notice threat before it fully arrived, to stay 2 steps ahead of danger as a matter of survival rather than preference. That training kept him alive more than once. It also meant that for years after leaving that life behind, he could not receive an ordinary kindness without first scanning it for a hidden cost. A neighbor offered to help repair his fence, and his first instinct was to calculate what would eventually be asked of him in return. A grandchild ran to hug him, and some part of him tensed for half a second before he could let the embrace land fully. He was not cold. He was calibrated, by necessity, for a world that no longer required that particular calibration, and nobody had ever shown him how to recalibrate on purpose. What eventually changed for him was small and almost embarrassingly simple. He began practicing one sentence, silently, every time something good was offered to him before his old scanning reflex could finish its calculation. The sentence was simply, "This is safe to receive," not because he had proof each time. Because the sentence itself, repeated enough, slowly retrained a nervous system that had never been given permission to stand down. I share his story because the mechanism underneath it is the same one we have been naming all message long, dressed in a uniform instead of a childhood, but built from the exact same reflex. Threat and blessing arrive through the same door in a nervous system trained only to guard that door rather than to open it selectively. Here is a practice worth trying tonight, before sleep, gentle and physical rather than only mental. Lie down the way you normally would. Instead of curling your hands or crossing your arms, the way most bodies default to without thinking, let both palms rest open, facing upward, resting loosely at your sides. Notice how unfamiliar that posture feels if you are someone who has spent years bracing. Notice any urge to close your hands back into something more familiar, more guarded. Let the urge pass without obeying it, just for the length of a few slow breaths. This is not a magic position. It will not, by itself, undo years of a trained reflex in a single night. What it does, done consistently, is give your body a small repeated rehearsal of a stance it has rarely been allowed to practice, an open hand held on purpose rather than one that only opens by accident when nothing feels threatening enough to close it. There is a kind of gratitude that works the same way the open hand does, and it is worth naming plainly here because most people practice a shallower version of it without realizing a deeper one exists. Shallow gratitude notices a good thing after it has already fully arrived and been confirmed safe. Deeper gratitude, the kind that actually trains the reception channel rather than simply commenting on it afterward, thanks something before the outcome is fully certain, while the hand is still technically empty. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. Thanking something only after it is fully proven safe never touches the reflex at all, because the reflex has already finished its job by the time gratitude shows up. Thanking something while it is still arriving, still uncertain, still capable of disappointing you, is the exact rehearsal an open hand actually needs. Chosen one, I want you to try this once, right now, before we continue. Think of one thing you are hoping for, something not yet arrived. Something you have perhaps stopped saying out loud because hope like that has disappointed you before. And quietly, simply say thank you for it now, before it arrives, the way you might thank someone for a gift you can see them already carrying toward you across a room. If that felt strange, even slightly foolish, notice that feeling without judging it. That strangeness is not proof the practice is wrong. It is proof of exactly how long the reflex has been running the show uncontested. We have spent a long time now standing in the space between two frequencies, naming the dimming of one and the closing of the other, walking through gardens and old soldiers and evenings by the door. Everything shared so far has been building toward the exact mechanism we left unnamed a few minutes ago, the one sitting quietly underneath the bracing reflex itself. There is a difference worth naming between two kinds of asking, because most people only ever practice one of them, and it happens to be the weaker one. The first kind asks from lack. It sounds like please, because I do not have enough, because I am running low, because without this I do not know what happens next. There is nothing wrong with this kind of asking. It is honest, and honesty always has a place in front of the powerful hand we have been speaking of tonight. The second kind asks from identity. It sounds different, even when the words are almost the same. It asks the way a child asks a parent for something the child already knows the parent wants to give, not because the child has earned it, but because that is simply what the relationship already is. The first kind asks a stranger for mercy. The second kind asks a father for what a father already intends to give. Here is what I want you to notice about your own life, gently. Most of your asking has probably come from the first place, lack, because lack is loud and identity is quiet, and quiet things get crowded out by loud ones, unless someone points them out directly. I think of a young widow I once heard about, left with far less than she needed and a child still small enough to need constant attention. She had every reason in the world to ask from lack, and for the first year she did desperately, the way anyone would. What eventually shifted for her was not her circumstances. It was a single sentence someone said to her almost in passing, that she was not a beggar standing outside a door, she was a daughter standing inside a house that already belonged, in part, to her. She did not fully believe it the first time she heard it. She kept turning it over anyway. The way you turn over a stone you are not sure is valuable yet. Provision did not arrive for her all at once, dramatically, the way it might in a story built to impress you. It arrived unevenly, a small job that appeared through someone she barely knew, a debt quietly forgiven by a landlord who never explained why, a season of just enough that slowly became a season of more than enough. She told people afterward that the circumstances had not changed nearly as fast as something inside her chest had changed first. That order matters. Her asking changed before her income did. And once her asking changed, from lack to identity, she found she was no longer bracing every time something good was offered to her, because a daughter does not brace when her father hands her something. She simply receives it and says thank you, and goes on with her day. Chosen one, here is a small practice worth trying, one that costs nothing and takes less than a minute. The next time you find yourself about to ask for something, silently or out loud, pause before the words come out, and notice which posture you are asking from. A stranger at a door, or a child in a house that is already yours. You do not have to change the words. Simply noticing the posture underneath them begins to shift something quieter than the words themselves, something closer to the actual mechanism we have spent this whole message naming. There is a kind of listening, too, worth mentioning here, different from the listening most people practice. Most listening waits for an answer to arrive as words, a thought, a clear sentence forming in the mind. There is an older kind of listening that waits instead for a settling, a quiet confirmation somewhere lower than thought, closer to the chest than to the head. Tonight, if you have a question you have been carrying, try asking it once, plainly, and then simply sit in silence for a slow count of 20, not waiting for words to arrive, only waiting to notice whether something in your chest settles or tightens. That settling, when it comes, is not nothing. It is often the very beginning of an answer, long before the answer has found language to travel in. There is still one thread left hanging in everything we have named tonight, a question this message has been circling without yet answering directly. Why, even once someone understands all of this clearly, does the old reflex still sometimes win? There is one common enemy of receiving that almost nobody names correctly, because it disguises itself so well. Most people assume the enemy of receiving is doubt, not believing something good is actually possible. Doubt matters, and we have spent real time on it tonight. But there is an older, quieter enemy standing behind doubt, and it is haste. Haste says the answer should have arrived already, and its absence proves something is wrong, either with you or with the whole idea. Haste cannot tell the difference between a door that will never open and a door that is simply still swinging on its hinge a half second before it opens completely. From the outside, in the exact moment just before, both doors look identical. I think of an inventor whose name never made it into any history book, a man who spent years building something he believed in, funded on savings that ran out long before recognition ever arrived. He stood, more than once, at the edge of quitting entirely, convinced the silence around his work meant it was simply never going to matter to anyone but him. What he did not know, standing in that exact silence, was that the very thing he was building had already begun quietly changing hands 2 towns over, passed along by someone who had seen it once and could not stop thinking about it. The turn had already started. It simply had not yet become visible from where he was standing. He nearly walked away 3 weeks before that turn reached him. 3 weeks, not because his work was flawed, and not because the moment was not coming, because haste, dressed up as realism, told him that if it had not arrived yet, it never would. I do not tell you his story to promise you a specific timeline, because I already told you earlier tonight that anyone offering you a guaranteed date is telling you something comfortable rather than something true. I tell you his story because the shape of that near miss, quitting moments before the turn, is one of the most common shapes a stalled breakthrough actually takes, far more common than the shape of a door that truly never opens at all. Here is a practice worth carrying forward from tonight, small enough to actually keep. Once a day, for just 60 seconds, sit somewhere quiet and simply wait, without checking anything, without scrolling anything, without filling the silence with a plan for what to do next. Let the 60 seconds be entirely unproductive on purpose. This will feel uncomfortable if you are someone who has spent years treating stillness as wasted time. That discomfort is worth sitting inside rather than fleeing from, because haste cannot survive being looked at directly for very long. It only survives in the corner of the eye, in the constant motion that never gives it a chance to be examined. What you are training in that 60 seconds is not patience in the abstract. You are training your nervous system to tolerate the specific gap between asking and receiving without collapsing that gap through panic, through premature conclusions, through walking away exactly 3 weeks too early the way the inventor almost did. Chosen one, I want to say something plainly here, because it deserves to be said before we go any further. If you have been waiting a long time already, if tonight finds you closer to giving up than you have admitted to anyone, including yourself, I want you to hear this clearly. The waiting you have already done is not wasted. It has never once been wasted, even in the seasons that felt the most like standing still. Some of the strongest people I have ever watched receive something real were, in the season right before it arrived, the ones who felt closest to giving up entirely. That is not a coincidence worth dismissing. It is often simply what the last stretch of genuine preparation feels like from the inside, indistinguishable, in the moment, from the feeling of arriving nowhere at all. And now, finally, here is the mechanism itself, the one waiting quietly underneath the bracing reflex, underneath the closed hand, the one that ties everything named tonight into a single, complete picture. The bracing reflex we already named protects you from surprise in general. What sits underneath it is far more specific, and it has been running quietly beneath almost every part of your life without a name until right now. Someone offers to help you, and the word no leaves your mouth before you have finished deciding whether you actually wanted the help. A compliment arrives and you hand it straight back, deflecting it before it has a chance to land anywhere inside you. Good news shows up, and before relief has time to settle, Some part of you is already scanning ahead for the part where it falls apart. You have wanted more your entire life, and yet you have quietly refused 100 small arrivals of it without ever once noticing you were doing it. You have called that independence. Some of you have called it humility, or simply not wanting to be a burden on anyone. It is neither of those things. It is a reflex, and reflexes are installed in us, not chosen by us, usually so early that by the time you are old enough to question it, it already feels like personality rather than something that happened to you. Here is the deeper mechanism sitting underneath the bracing reflex we already named, the one that explains why bracing itself has never actually been about the good thing arriving at all. There is a brainwave state called beta associated with alertness, vigilance, constant problem solving. The state your mind defaults to, under stress, under scarcity, under the low background hum of modern survival. Beta is useful in small doses. Lived in continuously, beta crowds out an entirely different state called alpha, the frequency connected to openness, ease, and the simple capacity to receive something without immediately analyzing it for danger. When beta runs the show for years at a time, alpha gets pushed further and further into the background, and the channel that would normally let good things in without a fight simply stops opening on its own. I call this the stress signal, not because a single laboratory assigned it that exact name, but because that is precisely what it feels like from the inside, a constant low alarm treating every incoming good thing as a threat, requiring a defensive reaction first. This connects to research on stress physiology and brainwave activity conducted across decades, including work associated with Stanford and Boston University and other research institutions, studying how chronic stress states affect the nervous system. What that research describes is a documented relationship between prolonged stress activation and reduced access to calmer, more receptive brain states. The stress signal, the name I give to the felt experience of that shift, is my own term for a pattern observed repeatedly in real people, not a phrase borrowed from any single paper. Here is why this matters more than the first mechanism we named. The bracing reflex protects you from surprise in general. The stress signal specifically closes the channel that lets good things in. One is a general alarm. The other is a closed gate, standing directly in front of the exact thing you have been hoping would finally arrive. There is an old teaching, one you may have heard as a child without anyone explaining what it truly meant. A teacher once said, "A person must become like a little child to receive what he called the kingdom." Fewer people notice he was describing exactly this, a child who receives a gift without needing to first prove she has earned it, without needing to check whether accepting it makes her indebted, without any of the calculation adults have been trained to run before saying a simple yes. You have called your closed hand independence. You have called it not wanting to owe anyone anything. It is neither. It is a signal running in the wrong direction, treating every arrival as a debt requiring immediate defense, and it is not a character trait. It is a frequency, which means it can be brought back into range the same way any frequency can. So it was never that nothing good came looking for you. Things came, repeatedly, quietly, the way most good things actually arrive, small and unannounced rather than dramatic. You were simply running a signal that could not hold them once they arrived, deflecting them by reflex before you ever got the chance to actually keep what was already yours. Not a life short on opportunity, a life full of arrivals you were trained, without your consent, to refuse. Here is something you can do the next time anything at all is offered to you. A compliment, a seat, a small kindness from someone you barely know. Do not improve it. Do not deflect it. Do not explain why it was not necessary. Say one word. Yes. Then notice, carefully, Exactly where in your body something tries to immediately undo that yes. A tightening in the chest, a reflex to add a qualifier. That resistance you just located precisely there is the entire pattern we have spent this whole message describing, and now that you can feel it directly, you can finally begin working with it rather than being run by it. Chosen one, hold both mechanisms together now. Because they were never two separate stories, they have always been one story told in two parts, in a specific order. A wonder that dimmed first. A hand that closed second. Wake the first without addressing the second, and you become curious again while still refusing everything curiosity brings you. Address the second without the first, and you try to receive with a mind too dimmed to even recognize what just arrived. This is the entire architecture behind why you are still waiting for an offer that, in truth, has already been extended toward you more than once. Not one missing piece. Two, in a fixed order, both real, both nameable, both far more workable than you have been allowed to believe. If this landed the way I suspect it did, this is worth marking clearly. Below where you are listening, leave the words, both doors. Because naming both mechanisms out loud, even in 3 typed words, is itself a small act of finally facing something you have likely spent years quietly managing alone. Let us slow all the way down for a moment before we go there. What comes next carries real weight, and weight is better carried after a breath than during a rush. Take a moment right where you are. Let your shoulders soften. There is nowhere else you need to be for the next several minutes except exactly here, listening to something that was written for exactly this moment in your life, whether you fully believe that yet or not. I want to tell you something honest before we continue, something I do not say lightly. There is a thought some of you have been carrying quietly this entire message, one that sounds something like this. All of this makes sense for other people. I am not sure it is actually for me. I understand why that thought shows up. It shows up for almost everyone standing this close to something real. I am not going to argue you out of it, because arguing rarely dissolves a feeling like that. I will simply say what I know to be true from watching this pattern for a long time. The people who feel least deserving of an offer like this one are, more often than not, exactly the people it was written for. There is an old idea worth naming here plainly. Becoming like a child does not mean becoming impressive enough to deserve a seat at the table. It means becoming small enough, honest enough, and open enough to admit you were never going to earn your way there in the first place, and that the seat was never contingent on earning it to begin with. I want to be honest about my own limits here too, because that honesty matters more than sounding certain about everything. I cannot tell you exactly which day something shifts for you, or exactly how your particular story unfolds from here. Anyone who claims that level of certainty about your life is telling you something comfortable rather than something true. What I can tell you with real confidence is the order, because I have watched the order hold across a great many different lives, different backgrounds, different seasons of struggle. The child wakes first, the receiving opens second. That sequence has held every time I have watched it closely enough to be sure. If some part of you has believed, quietly, that this offer, this restoration, this receiving is simply not meant for someone like you, I want to say this as clearly as I can. That belief is not humility, however gently it disguises itself. It is the exact bracing reflex we named earlier, wearing one more costume, protecting you from a disappointment that was never actually going to happen this time. Now, close your eyes for a moment if you are somewhere that allows it, or simply soften your gaze if you are not. I want to walk you into a specific morning, one that has not happened yet, one that is entirely available to you, once both frequencies we have named tonight are finally restored in order. Picture a morning some months from now. Something arrives, unannounced, the way good things actually tend to arrive, rather than the dramatic way we imagine them arriving. A number on a page, a door opening somewhere you had quietly stopped expecting one to open, a name you did not expect to hear again, offering something you had stopped letting yourself want out loud. And here is the strangest part of this particular morning, the part worth dwelling in a little longer than feels comfortable. Nothing in you moves to refuse it. No old reflex reaches for a reason to explain it away. No familiar tightening in the chest arrives to brace against it. You simply notice it, and something in you, quietly, without ceremony, opens to receive it. Stay in that morning a moment longer. Notice your hands in this picture, open, resting, not clenched around anything, not braced against anything either. Notice your breath, slower than usual, the way breath moves when nothing inside you is on guard. This is not a fantasy engineered to make you feel good for 30 seconds before vanishing. This is what a fully opened hand actually feels like from the inside. Ordinary, quiet, almost too simple to notice unless you have spent years without it. Now let us name the gap honestly. Somewhere in your life right now exists a person who has reached for good things for years, sometimes catching them, more often watching them slip past at the last possible moment. And somewhere just ahead of you exists the person in the morning we just pictured together, who reaches for nothing and simply receives. The distance between those two people was never effort, and it was never deserving. It was one channel, closed a long time ago by circumstances entirely outside your control, that has simply never been shown how to open. That is, the whole distance, not years, not luck. One channel, waiting. Here is something true worth sitting with before we continue. That morning, you just pictured moves one day further away. For every day, the two frequencies stay exactly where they have been sitting, not because a countdown is punishing you, because waiting itself has a real, quiet cost. The cost of another ordinary day lived braced instead of open. Before we move forward, I want to give you something to actually do right now. Not later, not tomorrow, because understanding something in the mind and experiencing it in the body are two different kinds of knowing, and the second kind changes people faster than the first. Sit comfortably, exactly where you are. You do not need silence, and you do not need anything special around you. Simply let your hands rest, open, palms upward, wherever they naturally fall. Picture, for a moment, a single room. In that room, a child, the same one we have spoken about all message long, is sitting quietly by a door that has been closed for a long time. The door is not locked. It has simply never been shown that it opens. Notice what you are doing right now is not reaching for something outside of you. You are being handed something that was always addressed to you, and being asked, for what may be the first time in years, to simply take it rather than earn it. Let one hand rise slightly, gently, as if receiving something small and light being placed into it. Let your breath go with the motion, slower on the way out than it was on the way in. Notice your shoulders drop a little further than they were a minute ago. That is enough. You do not need a longer version of this practice to feel that your chest is holding something slightly different than it was 5 minutes ago. If that shift was real for you, even slightly, this is worth marking clearly. Below where you are listening, leave the word "ope," because your body just rehearsed exactly what the rest of tonight is asking your whole life to practice. Here is a question worth sitting with honestly, now that both frequencies have been fully named and something in your body has already begun practicing the second one. Why has understanding all of this on its own not yet changed anything? You can name both mechanisms now. You can describe the exact sequence required, and tomorrow morning, if nothing else changes, your chest may do exactly what it did this morning. The answer is not that you failed to understand correctly. Understanding was never the missing piece. Understanding shows you the door. It does not, by itself, walk you through it. The rest of what you need is not more explanation. It is something built specifically to hold the sequence steady long enough for your nervous system to finally learn it as automatic rather than effortful. Here is what you now know that you did not know at the very start of this message. 2 frequencies went quiet in you, in a specific order, a long time ago, through no fault of your own. The first dimmed a wonder that was never actually lost, only turned down. The second closed a hand that was never actually broken, only trained to brace. And the second cannot be fully restored while the first is still sitting in the dark, because a mind too dimmed to notice what arrives cannot properly teach a hand how to hold it. That is the sequence plainly stated, the way plain language deserves to state something this important. Restoration comes first, waking the child. Reception comes second, opening the hand. Reversed, or attempted separately without the order intact, neither one completes what the other was always meant to finish. There is a name for the whole architecture, the one we already gave it earlier tonight. Child mind reversal. It gives you a hand you can act on, a plain instruction rather than an abstract feeling. Wake the child first, then teach the hand to open. In that order, every time, for as long as it takes, without needing to force either step faster than it is ready to move. And here, finally, is who all of this makes you, once both frequencies begin moving back into place. Not someone new, invented for the occasion, someone restored, returned to a version of yourself that existed before the world got its hands on you, a child of light who was always going to be handed exactly what has been on its way to you the entire time you have been listening tonight. The clarity you just received is real. I want to honor that plainly, because clarity earned through genuine understanding matters. And clarity, on its own, has never once opened a channel by itself. Clarity shows the door. Something else has to walk through it. Chosen one, before anything else is named, I want to say something plainly. There was a version of you, once, in whom both frequencies played at once, wonder and reception, alive together, undivided. That version was never lost. It was only dimmed in a specific order, a long time before you had any say in the matter. That order matters more than almost anything else said tonight, because it explains why partial fixes have never fully held. The wonder went quiet first, the hand closed second, and what follows next exists for one reason only, because someone still remembers exactly who you were before the world got its hands on you. There was a name given earlier, quietly, to something you would come back to later. That name was never a tease for its own sake. It was a promise, and the moment for that promise has now arrived. Here is what happens the moment a mind stops merely wondering and starts truly working again. It stops being an idea and becomes a tool, one built specifically to reverse the exact pattern we spent this entire message naming. Something already exists for this, created for precisely this purpose, and it deserves to be named plainly rather than left as another vague reference. It is called the Genius Song, a 7-minute audio track. The mechanism you already understand, the gamma wave activation we named earlier as the answer to the decline effect, is exactly what this was built to restore, packaged into something you simply listen to rather than something you have to force. The man behind it, Dr. Robert Lake, spent 34 years as a neuroscientist before releasing this specific work, and it draws on research conducted across MIT, Princeton, Harvard, and several other leading research universities. What it hands back to you is not a technique to practice. It is the child waking, curiosity returning, wonder no longer turned down to a whisper, becoming like that child again. The way an old teaching once put it, is the beginning of the whole sequence. There is a woman we spoke about earlier, the one who spent years feeling one step behind good timing that seemed to arrive easily for everyone else. What she eventually found, once someone finally showed her the gate she had never known existed, was this exact 7-minute track, used quietly, nightly, until small arrivals stopped feeling like accidents. She never once mentioned it by name until asked directly. She simply noticed her days had started shifting, and when that first wave does what it was built to do, waking what had gone quiet, here is what almost no one is told, plainly enough. The child wakes, and still, so often, cannot yet reach what belongs to it. That gap is not a flaw in the waking, it is the second door, the one still closed, standing right beside the first the entire time. We already named what stands guard at that second door earlier tonight, the stress signal, the closed hand trained to brace rather than receive. One frequency restores the child. A second, separate frequency opens the reception channel. Both are required, in the exact order we have named all message long, child-mind reversal. The two waves stack, become like the child first, then receive as the child receives, without negotiation. That is the whole of what comes next. The second wave completes exactly what the first one opened. It carries a different name, the wealth signal, a 5-minute audio paired with what is called the 9-word script, an ancient technique held here without claiming any single tradition as its origin. Where the first mechanism raised gamma, this one works the opposite direction, lowering the beta activity we named as the stress signal while raising alpha, the frequency of receiving. This is the reception channel itself, finally taught to open rather than brace. Behind this work is Dr. Stephen Newton, a neuroscientist who broke from the establishment to release this specific research, drawing on work connected to Stanford, Boston University, and other research institutions studying stress and receptivity. He and Dr. Lake never worked together, two independent researchers arriving at the same sequence from two entirely different directions. Once the child is awake and the channel is finally open, opportunity arrives without the old tug-of-war. A compliment lands instead of getting deflected. Receiving stops requiring a fight. Become like the child, an old teaching said, and only then receive. That second half finally closes here. Chosen one, a fair question sits underneath everything just said, and it deserves a direct answer rather than a dodge. Why two, and not simply one? Because the two frequencies went quiet in a fixed sequence, and restoration only holds when it follows that same sequence, the child mind alone gives you wonder without a channel wide enough to receive what wonder notices. The reception channel alone gives you an open hand attached to a mind still too dimmed to recognize what just arrived. Neither finishes the work alone. Together, in order, they do. I also want to be honest about something simpler. Starting anything new tonight is a real commitment, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. What it actually asks of you is small. A few quiet minutes a day, nothing to master, nothing graded. And if any hesitation remains after everything shared tonight, the guarantee ahead was built to carry that weight, so you do not have to carry it alone. So here is the complete picture, laid out plainly. Complete restoration is where this entire message has been leading. Both frequencies restored together, in the correct order, the child awake, and the hand finally able to receive what wonder notices. It is not the largest item on a list. It is the conclusion the whole night has been walking toward. For some, restoration itself is the honest starting point, the genius song alone, the beginning of the very same journey rather than a smaller substitute for it. And for the rare few in whom the child was never fully asleep, only the second frequency applies, the wealth signal alone, and that door sits below as well. Two waves finish one restoration. They multiply each other, rather than simply adding up. Alongside either path stand two gifts, freely included: Genius Child, built to help protect the next generation from ever needing this same restoration later in life, and 20 Wealth Signal Success Stories, real accounts from people further along the same path. Together with everything else in the complete path, total value stands at $418, already included, nothing further to add. Every path carries a 90-day guarantee, full refund, no conditions, no need to send anything back, and every bonus stays yours even if you ever ask for that refund. Roughly 38,000 people have walked through one or both of these waves already, and fewer than 5%, according to the numbers on record, have ever asked for their money back. There is nothing to learn here and no discipline to build. You simply listen, a small number of minutes each day. Everything arrives immediately by direct link, no shipping, no recurring charge of any kind. People spend far more, in time and in effort, on a single weekend retreat, a multi-week course, or a string of coaching sessions chasing exactly this same shift. This asks for minutes a day instead. Remember the morning we pictured together earlier, the one where something arrives and nothing in you moves to refuse it? Every day the two frequencies stay exactly where they are, is one more day that morning waits a little further out. Nothing forces you toward it. The version of you already standing in that morning is simply looking back at this exact moment, waiting for you to step toward it rather than past it. In one place, both original recordings, built on real research, every bonus included, and a guarantee covering all of it. Nothing counterfeit to watch for, nothing else to compare it against. Exactly one gathering of everything just described, sitting directly beneath this message. Before you go any further, pause for just a moment. Rest one hand over your chest, if that feels natural, and ask yourself, honestly, which sentence feels truer of you right now? The child in me has been asleep for a long time, or the child is still awake but has never been able to reach what belongs to it. Your own spirit already knows the answer. There is no need to rush it. The paths are waiting exactly where this message said they would be, below where you are listening, and again in the pinned comment, in case one is easier to find than the other. Something in you already knows which door has been calling your name tonight. Let this be the moment you finally walk through it instead of past it. And one more thing, for anyone whose path goes further than this. The youthful brain exists for those wanting an amplified version of the restoration wave, and the wealth signal accelerator exists for those wanting the reception channel to open faster still. You will meet both only after stepping through the door already described tonight, and I want to say this plainly. What has already been offered is whole and complete on its own. These simply exist for anyone whose spirit confirms they are ready to go deeper still. You have come this far with me tonight, and I want to acknowledge that plainly before we go any further. Most people who begin a message like this one do not reach this point. Something pulls their attention elsewhere long before the deepest part of the room is ever reached. You are still here, which tells me something true about you that I could not have known any other way. What remains now is the part I have been saving until last, on purpose, the way anyone saves the most important thing for the moment, when it will actually be heard, rather than rushed past. I am not going to rush it now either. Before we arrive there, I want to slow all the way down, more than at any other point tonight, because what comes next is not information. It is a closing, and a closing deserves to be entered the way you would enter a quiet room, rather than the way you would finish reading a page. Take one full breath right now, wherever you are. Let it move all the way down, past your chest, into whatever part of your body still feels the tightest after everything we have named tonight. You do not need to fix that tightness. Simply notice it is there one more time before we let it go together. I want to pause here and simply witness what has already happened in you tonight. Whether or not a single thing changes from this point forward, you sat through the naming of a reflex you have carried, unnamed, for years. You let a garden, a soldier, a widow, an inventor, a nurse, a young father, stand in for pieces of your own story you may never have said out loud to another person. That is not a small thing. Sitting through honest naming, without looking away, without numbing it with distraction, is itself a kind of courage most people never practice. If something in you has softened even slightly since the first words of this message, let that softening be acknowledged now, quietly, without needing to explain it to anyone, including yourself. Something real has already happened here. Whatever comes after this moment does not have to prove that. It has already been proven. There is a weight some of you have been carrying, one this message never asked you to name specifically, because you already know exactly what it is without me describing it. A bracing you have held in your shoulders for years. A hand you have kept closed out of habit rather than choice. A wondering, quiet and persistent, about whether you were somehow built to miss the good things that seem to find everyone else so easily. I want you to picture that weight now, the way you might picture something physical resting in your two hands, heavier than it should be for its size, the way old, familiar weights always are. You have carried it long enough. You did not choose to first pick it up, and you do not have to keep proving you can carry it either. Picture your hands opening slowly, the way we practiced earlier tonight with the palms turned upward. Picture that weight simply resting there for a moment longer, and then picture it beginning to slide slowly off the edges of your open palms, the way water eventually finds its way off any surface that is no longer holding it closed. Let your shoulders drop right now, as far as they will comfortably go. Let your jaw unclench if it has been clenched without your noticing. Exhale slower than you have exhaled all message long, and as you do, let that old weight finish its fall, all the way down, all the way gone, not because you forced it to leave, but because an open hand was never built to hold something like that in the first place. You do not have to pick it back up when this message ends. It was never actually yours to carry alone, and it is not yours to carry alone now either. Whatever name that weight has worn in your life, disappointment, delay, a door that seemed to close one too many times, let it go exactly as far as it wants to go, and do not chase after it to make sure it is really gone. It is. There is a stillness available right now that has nothing to do with anything being resolved yet. Some of what you came here carrying may still be unresolved an hour from now, a day from now, a season from now. That is allowed. Peace was never meant to wait for every circumstance to finish arranging itself first. It was always meant to arrive earlier than that, quietly, into a chest that has simply, finally, stopped bracing. I want to thank you, plainly, for staying, not for buying anything, not for leaving a word below, simply for staying present through something honest instead of reaching for a distraction the moment it asked something real of you. That is rarer than it should be, and it did not go unnoticed here. Whatever brought you to this exact message tonight, out of everything else you could have been doing with this hour, I do not think it was random. I have watched enough of these moments to recognize one when I see it, and this has the shape of a moment that was always going to happen, sooner or later, whether tonight was the night or not. It happened to be tonight. That is worth sitting with for a moment, quietly, before anything else is said. Stay in that stillness for a moment longer, before we go to the last thing this message came to say to you. Here is the last thing, and I want to say it plainly, without any performance in my voice, because the truest things are usually said quietly rather than shouted, at the end of a long night rather than at the loudest part of it. You are not who the delay told you that you were. You are not who the closed doors told you that you were. You are not who your own bracing, running silently for years without your permission, told you that you were. I am going to say something now the way it deserves to be said. Once, clearly, and I want you to let it land rather than analyze it while it is still arriving. You are the child who never actually stopped being wanted, even in the years it felt like nothing was coming. You are the one the wonder was always waiting to return to, not because you earned it back, but because it was never fully yours to lose in the first place. You are the hand that was only ever trained shut, never actually broken, and a trained thing can always be retrained. You are the one a powerful hand has already reached toward, before you asked, before you were ready, before you even had the language to describe what you were missing. I am someone who was taught a long time ago to brace for impact, even when what was coming was a gift. I am someone whose wonder was dimmed by people who never meant harm, and whose hand was closed by a world that mistook vigilance for wisdom. And I am also, still, underneath every single year of that bracing, exactly the person both frequencies were always waiting to return to. That is not a slogan. It is simply what is true, whether tonight is the night you fully believe it or only the night you first let yourself consider it. And so, from this moment forward, go carrying something different than what you carried in here tonight. Go noticing, instead of merely surviving. Go with a hand that stays open a half-second longer than the old reflex wants to allow. Go gently with yourself on the days the reflex still wins, because it will, sometimes, out of sheer habit. And that does not undo a single word spoken here tonight. You were never asked to become someone new to qualify for what has already been extended toward you. You were only ever asked to become, once again, the child who already knew how to receive without negotiating first. That is not a demotion. It is the whole of what a powerful hand has been waiting to hand back to you the entire time. Two frequencies went quiet in you a long time ago, in a specific order, through no fault of your own. Tonight, in this exact order, they are being named, restored, invited home. The wonder wakes first. The hand opens second. And in between those two movements stands the whole of what you came here tonight, without knowing it yet, to finally receive. If any part of this message named something true in you tonight, whether or not you ever go further than this moment, I want you to do one small thing before it ends. If a name came to mind earlier while you were listening, someone who has been bracing the same way you used to, someone who needs to hear that the reflex has a name and the name is not their fault, send this to them. Leave a word below marking that you heard this, so this message can find the next person the same way it found you. There is nothing else to add to what has already been said tonight. It has been said fully, and it does not need repeating to be true. Whatever you carry forward from this message, carry it with an open hand rather than a clenched one. Tonight and on every ordinary morning after this one. And so it is. There is a morning we pictured together earlier, the one where something arrives, unannounced, and nothing in you moves to refuse it. For some of you, tonight, that morning was simply a picture, something you could see clearly in your mind for the first time. For a few of you, it was something closer to recognition, the feeling of finally being handed language for something you already, quietly, knew. You know which one it was for you. Whatever is waiting for you, in the description, in the pinned comment, is there without pressure and without a clock counting down against you. Take it now or come back for it later, whenever you are ready, and either way, nothing about what you received here tonight changes. Brace yourself was never the right instruction. It was simply the only one anyone ever gave you. Tonight, a powerful hand is still extending exactly what it was always extending. And the only thing that has changed, if anything has changed at all, is that you are finally the one standing there with your hands open instead of your arms crossed, ready to